Hey everybody, my name is Stephan Mielke and I'm professor in hematology and cell therapy at Karolinska. We're working with allogeneic stem cell transplantation and we're working with cell and gene therapy. That is such an exciting field. And we have a great history here in Sweden because we have been very, very early in Europe to actually apply these therapies. And now, like everybody else, we are fighting with the implementation of therapy. And that's not an easy one. And one way we have solved this issue is that we have really come together and created a network, a cooperative network, which we call SWECARNET, to actually meet each other. And today we should have a meeting at a fantastic meeting place on Gotland, which is called Almedalen. But then came COVID, and we cannot have that meeting. So, despite of having that meeting in person, we're having a virtual meeting. And this movie is to explain who we are and what we are standing for. And we're going to have additional parts in Swedish where we actually are going to meet patients, and together with my colleague professor in blood from Uppsala, we're going to discuss a bit on how to tackle the challenges of the future. But this is really to show who we are. And like everywhere else, we have an issue with cancer, and cancer incidence is rising. So more and more people are getting cancer. But on the other hand, therapies are getting better. So patients are surviving longer and longer with cancer, which is fantastic. But that means for us as a healthcare provider that we have to deal with more and more and more patients. It would be fantastic if we could cure them. Then we can really make sure that we take hand on patients, we cure them, and the disease is gone. And that's something we're developing right now. But we are not there yet. And cancer therapy has changed a lot. The classical columns of cancer therapy have been surgery, radiotherapy, chemotherapy. And then we had a moment where we developed what we call targeted therapy. We thought there's a little molecule for everybody that has cancer. But that didn't really work out. But then came immunotherapy. And here you see James Allison and Tasuku Honjo, 2019, when they got, in 2018, when they got their Nobel Prize, because they were working with checkpoint inhibition. And checkpoint inhibition is a way to reactivate the body's forces against cancer. The body is doing the job itself. And that was fantastic. We could cure patients for the first time that we were thought are incurable, and we could control cancer for much longer, even if we wouldn't be able to cure cancer. And this is why they really, really deserve this Nobel Prize. But it's much more than checkpoint inhibition. It's a new area, a new field, immunotherapy. And we have thought long that that could happen. But as cancer vaccines didn't work as we wanted them to work, and it was so much easier to look at genes and look for new molecules, we didn't really believe that it would ever happen. But now it's really happening. And we have already the new kids on the block. It's Selik Ajar from Weizmann Institute in Israel, Stephen Rosenberg from NIH, Carl June from UPenn, Michel Sadelin from New York MSKCC, and Stanley Riedel from Seattle. These guys have really translated a new therapy to patients in need. And we call them CAR T cells, gene-modified T cells. And Selig Achar, and he started with this 30 years ago at the Weizmann Institute. He was in charge of the immunology department, and he developed T-bodies. And it was fascinating. Not everybody believed that this could be really a cancer therapy, but he was all right with what he did. And now, 30 years later, we have a gene therapy, a cell-based gene therapy. And how does it work? I show it to you on this cartoon. You take a virus, and this virus is actually transfecting the autologous immune cells of the patient. At that point, the immune cell can express parts of an antibody domain, allowing to detect extracellular antigen on the surface of tumor cells. If you want to imagine the immune cells get glasses and can finally see the tumor that they couldn't see. But the beautiful thing with the therapy is the moment the antigen is detected, this therapy is dividing itself in the patient's a living therapy. It doesn't stop. More antigen, more immune system. And that can have some very tough reactions. And it feels a little bit like the flu at the beginning. Patients get fever, but it can be much more dramatic. And that is based on different factors. For example, how many tumor cells are around and how the pro-inflammatory situation in the patient looks like. And based on that, we can see a lot of side effects like cytokine release syndrome, neurotoxicity, and also impaired bone marrow function, bleedings, or, for example, infections. And these side effects can be life-threatening and may require intensive care. And this explains why these therapies do not belong in the hand of everybody, but in the hand of those who can handle cell and gene therapy. We have different CAR T cells, first, second, and third generation. First generation didn't really work. It's missing co-stimulatory molecules. Second generation has one co-stimulatory molecule, either CD28 or 41BB. Third generation CAR T cells actually have two co-stimulatory molecules. Doesn't mean that they are better. Most CAR T cells that we see today are second generation CAR T cells. Those CAR T cells that have been implemented into standard of care treatment are second generation CAR T cells. But we have started here in Sweden with third generation CAR T cells. That was very early, and we're very proud of that. It was 2014, a perfect collaboration between USA and Sweden, a collaboration between the Baylor College that provided the vector. It came from Malcolm Brenner's group, and it was given to Karolinska. They were producing the first third generation CAR T cells in Europe, GMP grade at Karolinska Hospital, under the leadership of Professor Pontus Blomberg, and Professor Gunilla Inblad treated the very first patient with CD19 positive diseases with these CAR T cells. A big success. The work is published. You can read it up. But the point of it was we have been very early in translating these drugs in Sweden. But when you look now, we have 2020, and we have two standard of care drugs in Europe and the USA in three indications. Then we will see later in the movie that we are a little bit behind, and so we have a problem with the implementation here. The ALL indication for the Novartis product Kymriah and the DLBCL indication in the Kymriah indication, and the Yescarta indication with the DLBCL indication. These are the two drugs that we are having. In Sweden, we have Kymriah only recommended for the ALL indication, and Yescarta only in the DLBCL indication. That's a little bit different to the rest of Europe and the rest of the world, and that has to do with a health economical recommendation that is part of the reimbursement system. And we have other drugs. We have JCAR17. It is a follow-up product of JCAR15, and it's that is a CAR T cell, as a 4-1BB CAR T, very much like Kymriah, but it has a fixed composition of CD4 and CD8 cells, a very interesting drug. And we were able to treat first patient at Karolinska in 2019 with this drug, and there was also Sweden's very first patient who got a second generation CAR T cell. But you can see already that was 2019, so what happened with the years in between. So both translation of these new CAR T cell products, but also implementation took time. Sweden's first standard of care patients were actually treated in Stockholm and in Lund. In Stockholm in 2019, a child received Kymriah in the ALL indication. In Lund 2020, the first adult patient with refractory relapsed DLBCL was treated. And you can see that the majority of patients were treated in Uppsala, and that we have roughly 50 patients having been treated in Sweden right now. And well, that is not a very high number. It was very high to start with, but now we have other countries that have treated many, many more patients than we do. That has to do with the implementation of the drug. And I would like to highlight this on this cartoon. We have a gap 1, and that is really, it's so difficult to translate a cell therapy. All of you who have tried it, it takes forever. There's no guarantee of success, and it's a long, long way. We had 30 years of translation of allogeneic stem cell transplantation to standard of care. Now we have 30 years of translation of CAR T cell treatment to standard of care. So 30 years, that's a long, long time. And we see that again and again with cell and gene therapy. But now we are facing another gap, and that is a gap that is not obvious to everybody. It's a gap of implementation. And that means we have a standard therapy, but now we have to apply it. It has to be integrated in the patient pathway, and it has to be available for everybody in need. And the healthcare system has to be able to handle these therapies with their experience. And that is something that is not easy for anybody. And here comes SWECARNET, and here is our main goal. We would like to support the implementation of CAR T cells, and we would also like to support the further development of CAR T cells, like the translation of the next products that are coming in the future. And it doesn't matter where they come from. We work together with the industry, with academic players, with the universities, and of course with the hospitals. And we would like to be really a cooperative network. And we are open for other partners to join. We are not based on one location. So at our our last in-person CAR T cell meeting in November 2019 in Stockholm, you can see that we had our colleagues here from Lund, Gothenburg, Stockholm, Uppsala, and Linköping. We had companies in place, Novartis, Celgene, and Gilead, and our role is really education. We would like to develop competence, make sure that we keep up the quality. We believe in JCFACT accreditation. We like to organize meetings and lectures to educate everybody, but we are also open for the competent authorities to listen to us and to use us as a source of information. We work together with a regional cancer group and with the Swedish Norwegian bone marrow transplant group. And we are very happy to be supported by a grant from Swelife-ATMP. This is a busy cartoon, but it explains how we really position SWECARNET. We know we have a regional cancer center that really has, and there's not that many countries in the world that can say that have really an established treatment pathway for the most cancer indication. For example, for lymphoma, for pediatric tumors, for multiple myeloma, for leukemias, and for solid tumors. However, and these people have a CAR T cell group that is dealing with CAR T cells. However, the application of CAR T cells really takes very often place on the transplant side, and here we have the Swedish Norwegian bone marrow transplant group that has also a cell therapy group that deals with the handling of ATMPs. And SWECARNET is really like an interface between the diagnosis and the common trunk of application, and to make sure that we understand, independent of the diagnosis, how to safely apply and implement these new drugs for the benefit of our patients. And we use national conferences to make decisions, or not decisions, but suggestions on who should have the treatments and who can benefit best for it. I really appreciate that you listen to this. We are going to meet now patients together, and we are going to discuss how we can move the field further. This is interesting times. It's COVID times. It's very unusual to have everything electronic, but for the sake of safety, we have to do it, but we cannot sleep because we need to move on. And this is why we use this way of speaking with each other. Highly appreciate of your attendance, and looking forward to see you guys again. Okay, bye-bye.